actually LinkedIn had a survey at the beginning of 2019. They probably did one 2020, but I haven't seen it. And they asked what you're looking for in your employees. And the number one thing people were looking for.
Hi guys, welcome to the show where we learn from the people who have followed their passion to achieve great success and have impacted many lives. If you're new here, then please do consider subscribing to this channel. This episode is being recorded in association with Let's Localize, an organization with a mission to foster micro contributions from communities and businesses to support schools for their need of time, skill, and money. I'm your host, Ajay Mathur, and my guest today is an educator, a journalist, an author, and a globally sought after speaker and an entrepreneur. She is the vice chair of Creative Commons Advisory Council and has authored 2 best-selling books. One is The Moonshot in Education and How to Raise Successful People. She is also a mother of a super family, having raised 3 super successful daughters, including Susan Wojcicki, who is the CEO of YouTube, and 23andMe's CEO Ann Wojcicki, and a top medical researcher, Jenet Wojcicki. She has been featured in Time Magazine, Inc., Huffington Post, CNBC, just to name a few. Please welcome one of the most influential figure in education, also known as the godmother of Silicon Valley, Esther Wojcicki. Esther, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here. And thank you for such a great introduction.
Thanks a lot. You deserve it all. So you were actually started your career as a journalist, if I'm not wrong, and then you moved into education. I want to know, so I wanted to know what was your motivation to switch that career?
So I've loved journalism since I was a child, and I started working as a journalist when I was about 14 years old. And I was just kind of like the Go Friday girl, the one that did everything around the newspaper. It was a small local newspaper in Los Angeles. And then I actually managed to get a degree from University of California, Berkeley in journalism as well. And I of course, was planning to go to work in journalism, but this was the 1960s. And if you look back at history in the 1960s, you'll see that women were not really allowed in journalism. There were press clubs that, sort of places where all the journalists hung out and got to socialize and get ideas from each other. And women were excluded. And it was an all-man profession. And so that created some problems for me. I mean, I didn't give up on that one, by the way. I still was, I've always been sort of persistent. But I was also relegated to writing just about women. They used to have a section of the newspaper, and it was called the women's section. So you had the front section, which is news, and then the editorial section, and then the sports section, and then the women's section.
Which newspaper was that?
All newspapers, all newspapers, everywhere. I'm sure in England as well. Okay. And the women's section would have stories about how to take care of your children and how to take care of your husband and what was the best vacuum cleaner. And I mean, really, and I was like, I don't want to write for this section. I want to write for the news section. Anyway, that was quite the battle. I'm not sure I won that one. But then when I had my 3 children, that was in the 1970s. What happened is that I really could not get a job locally. I had to travel like an hour away. San Francisco is basically an hour away from where I live. And so I decided, well, this is just not going to work. And so, I have this passion for journalism and I love kids. Why don't I just teach? And so that's how I started out as a teacher. And actually, I've been teaching for 40 years, which is like shocking for most people. It's like I keep saying, oh, not only did you miss out in being in my class, but your parents were probably in my class. It's a pretty amazing experience to have had that, personally. And then I love teaching. and I loved being with students. And the only thing that I didn't love was the curriculum. I didn't like the way that they were teaching. I didn't like the way they were treating students. So I made a lot of drastic changes, and that created a lot of problems with the administration and a lot of problems for me. But again, I didn't give up. And so the program started in 1984 at Palo Alto High School in the heart of Silicon Valley. And there were about 20 kids in the program. And throughout the years, what I did is I changed it from direct instruction, where I was always telling the kids what to do and always lecturing, to collaborative instruction. It was back then that didn't have a name, but it really is today, is named blended learning. And turns out the kids all loved it. And so they told their friends, and the friends told their friends. And within a few years of being there, the program had already grown. I went from 20 students to about 50 students. By the end of the 1990s, I had gone from the original number of 20 to 100. And I was like, oh my God, this is a big class. I'm not sure I can handle this. I think I need another teacher to help me. And so of course I put a lot of pressure on the administration to provide another teacher. And I was like, look at, we have all these kids. It's the most popular class in the whole school district. Anyway, it would take a long time for me to tell you how I succeeded in getting another teacher, but in brief, I did. And so then we started another publication, or I started another publication called Verde, which was a magazine. And I remember when I started that, the administration said to me, a magazine? Well, I mean, schools don't have magazines. Don't you know that? It's only high school newspapers. That's all they have. They don't have magazines. And I said, well, maybe they don't, but now they do. They now have a new magazine. And it turns out that magazine was very popular. And I sent it off to a competition at Columbia University, and it won first place in the nation. And, you know, school districts, they love positive feedback, positive support. And so when they heard that it won all of those awards, they're like, ah, sure, we'll get you another teacher. No problem. So that's how the program started to grow. And then, to make a long story short, throughout the 2000, 2002, 2004, 6, every 2 years, I started another publication. And today at Palo Alto High School, there's 700 plus kids and 10 publications. And, you know, I wanted to have publications for all the kids to join. You know, we have sports and news and foreign affairs and, you know, whatever they want to write about, arts and entertainment. And we have a television program and a radio program and a movie making program. Anyway, they're all pretty happy.
So how are your classes different than the traditional classrooms?
Well, my classes are really different. Well, the beginning class is, if you come in at the very beginning, you'll see me doing what a typical teacher does. I'm in front of the class and I'm lecturing. But what I do, it takes about 20 weeks. It's the first semester. I go from being the traditional teacher to being the teacher on the side, the coach. And if you go into the advanced classes, you'll see that the classes are run completely by the students. And I am there as a coach, but I don't run the class. I provide maybe 10 minutes of lecture a day, or maybe 15 minutes of lecture a day. And this is out of a 90-minute class period. But the rest of it is organized, led by, conceptualized by students. And the reason it's so popular is because it really teaches students what I call the most important skills for the 21st century, in addition to technology and social media. It gives them collaboration skills, communication skills, critical thinking skills, and creativity skills. And those are the skills every company today is looking for. Actually, LinkedIn had a survey at the beginning of 2019. They probably did one 2020, but I haven't seen it. And they asked what you're looking for in your employees. And the number one thing people were looking for, companies, creativity. You cannot learn to be creative. You cannot feel self-confident if you're always following instructions. You cannot learn to be creative by reading a book about it. It's just like you can't learn to swim by reading a book about it either. You know, you have to do it. Some things just have to be done in order to learn them. And as a matter of fact, most things, people learn most effectively by doing something. You know, again, any kind of skill is really the only way to do it is by doing it. So my classes in all those 700 kids, or plus maybe almost 800 now, they all work together as teams. There's 6 other journalism teachers there. They all follow the same method. Some people say, oh, you know, the reason they're so successful is just tied to you. It's you and your personality. And so I'm like, hey, there's 6 other teachers there and they're doing the same thing. So it's not just me. As a matter of fact, it's better to have other people, not just me, because I would like to spread it worldwide. Other teachers can do it. There is nothing as powerful as believing in a child, in a student, for them to then believe in themselves. And everybody wants kids to have grit and perseverance. Well, they're not going to have grit and perseverance if you're constantly telling them what to do. I mean, it's just like, hey, didn't you notice that you need to be able to be independent, to have grit? So yeah, that's what's different about my program. I would love to be able to help all students worldwide. I have never seen such amazing results anywhere that except that come out of programs that involve students. They're so creative. They're so willing to take a risk. They're not confined by what should be.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got there. That's a long answer to a short question. Sorry.
and that's what you termed as a moonshot classroom, isn't it?
That's a moonshot classroom. And I first described this in my book, Moonshots in Education. That was published in 2015. And I targeted that book at teachers. And it was published by an academic publisher in San Francisco. And they did zero publicity for the book because that's what academic publishers do. They just don't. And it got to be a bestseller anyway, somehow. And I was very pleased about that. And then the second book, How to Raise Successful People, was published by a major publisher. And that became a bestseller in the United States. And it's coming out, or it should be out now, in the UK, actually worldwide. It should be out in paperback sometime in the end of August or beginning of September everywhere. And its book is translated into 22 languages now.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm pretty excited. And I think the largest number of books being published at this time is in China. But I guess it's not surprising. They have, what, over 1 billion people? So 1 million books is just a drop in the bucket.
Of course. So in your, I think in your recent book, which has yet to come into the UK, you've identified some fundamental values to help become capable and successful in life, right? Could you tell us
Yes.
more about those values, please?
Okay, so I organized the book around an acronym to try to help people remember. And the acronym is TRICK, T-R-I-C-K. And it stands for trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. And my theory is that when you trust a student or trust a child as a parent, and you respect their ideas, you give them an opportunity to have their own ideas and respect them and let them try them out, give them independence, collaborate with them instead of dictating, which is what everybody does, and then treating them with kindness. Kindness is the key. I mean, people will forget what you said and they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And so you always need to remember the importance of kindness. And so that's what I do. And that's what I organized the book around the TRIC acronym. The other thing is that I give examples about the TRIC acronym. So there's a lot of personal examples about what happened to me growing up, what happened in my classes, what happened with my children, and so forth. And the reason I do give examples is because I believe that storytelling is the most effective way to make change. People remember stories. They don't remember facts. Well, sometimes they remember a few facts, but most of the time they remember stories.
Yeah.
So that's why the book's about stories. So I'd like to suggest and encourage people. I mean, you can't go down to your store and buy the book these days, but you can order it online, and it comes in, it's in 3 formats: the written book format, online format, and also the audio book in case you want to listen to it. I mean, nobody listens to it going to work anymore because no one's going to work. They're all staying home.
So what's the minimum age when you want these values to have your kids have them? Say, for example, trust and independence. How old your kids should be before they start to be independent and before you start trusting them?
Well, I don't want you to be too shocked. I'm glad you're sitting down. But toddlers, I mean, I think you start early. And I would give examples in the book of how my daughter, who at the age of 18 months, her duty was to fold diapers for her younger sister. And it turns out little kids can fold diapers. Back in those days, we had cloth diapers. Today, there's no folding diapers, but there's other little things that they can do. They can set the table, they can carry dishes. Um, the other thing I always had them do is clean up their toys, and I made it really easy. I just got a little plastic swimming pool and I put it in the family room. And their job was every day they had to take the toys they'd spread out all over the place and put them back in the swimming pool. And they thought that was a game. It worked out so well. So, I think when you start early and you make them feel like they are capable and they can do it, you just build on that. So if parents haven't started early and their kids are 14 or 15 and still expecting to be waited on, you make them dinner, you do their laundry, you make their bed, well, they can slowly move in that direction, to having their child help out. And it makes you, first of all, I want to tell all parents, not only is it easier for you, but it shows that you believe and trust your kid can do that. And just the belief in that and your child makes a big difference. So, if they don't want to make their bed that day, well, okay, they have to spend the day in a messy room. But at least they have given the option of doing it.
Yeah, I think that relates to the helicopter parenting that is so much more popular. So could you just define the helicopter parenting to what it is and how is it obstructing the development of children?
So we have not only in the United States do we have a nation of helicopter parents, it's worldwide. It's kind of like a virus that everyone caught. It's just, and the motive behind it is it's really good, benevolent, let's put it that way. The parent is just trying to help the child be the best they can be. And so what happens is that by doing things for your child, which is what the helicopter parent does, you hover. That's why it's called helicopter. You do it for your child because you want to make sure that they have the best. But what you're doing inadvertently, so it's an unintended consequence, that what you're doing is you are making your child dependent on you. And and the kids, by the time, some kids at the age of 14 and 15, they still can't do things that normal kids could have done, 50 years ago. The University of California at Berkeley, prior to this epidemic, had instituted a class called Adulting for all freshmen. And adulting was a course where this university was teaching kids how to cook, how to make your bed, how to do the laundry, how to take care of your finances, all the things that they had missed out on growing up. Because most of them were coming from these parents, these homes where there were helicopter parents. Actually, I've renamed the helicopter parents a little bit. I now call them snowplow parents because they clear the way. And then if they keep clearing the way and then the kid gets out in the real world and no one's clearing the way, there's just a lot of snow everywhere, then they have a hard time, right? It's like, oh no, there's a snowstorm. They need to practice. And most teenagers will want to do it themselves. You just have to give them that opportunity to do it and to believe them, trust them. They do a lot of crazy things, but if there's an open communication between parent and child, and they tell you about some of the things, or they say, hey, I'm planning on doing this or whatever, what do you think? I think that's a much more effective way to set the pattern of communication for adulthood. You want your adult children to be in touch with you all the time. I mean, fortunately, my adult children are still in touch with me. Of course, sometimes I wish that they wouldn't be, because they're like, Mom, can you come over and babysit? No, but I mean, you have to be grateful that they want me to come over and babysit.
So you just said that children want to be independent, most of them. So if I'm thinking of a class of, let's say, 8 years old or between 6 to 10 years old children, some of them actually take initiative and be proactive and do what they want to do. But there are some kids who follow others, what others are doing. How do you address that divide?
Well, the kids that are following adults all the time, the kids that are doing everything that the adults want them to do, are kids that feel dependent. And the real reason they feel dependent is the first 8 years of their lives, they were pretty much encouraged to be dependent. They were not encouraged to be independent. So, I don't want to make those kids feel uncomfortable. That's the last thing you want. So what you want to do is slowly give them opportunities for independence. And, for example, I did something, the story's in the book. We have a store here called Target. Target is sort of somewhat of a department store, maybe you could call it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know.
Yeah. Anyway, my two granddaughters, they were both 8 or 9 years old, and they had to go shopping for school supplies. And so my daughter asked me to take them shopping for school supplies. And so I thought, well, that sounds good. Who knows school supplies better than they do? They know what they need, right? So I just dropped them at the store, and I was like, call me when you're done and I'll come back and pick you up. Well, let me just tell you, my daughter called to find out how they were doing, and I was like, well, they're shopping, and I'm off doing something else. And there she's like, what? Left them in Target by themselves? I said, last time I checked, Target was not a dangerous place to be. Actually, it's a beautiful store. So anyway, my granddaughters, they were so thrilled. They were so empowered. They were all puffed up. You wouldn't believe it. And all their friends wanted to copy. It got to be like everybody wanted to do the same thing. And they did a great job of buying their school supplies. So, I mean, that was, I think, your typical child wants to be independent. Most of them do. I would just say, if they don't, they're afraid that they're going to make a big mistake, and that somehow, you being there is going to make a difference.
Yeah, definitely. And you have actually raised, you're a family of CEOs, you've raised two CEOs, and you yourself, you are a CEO yourself. What is the formula to raise CEOs?
Well, everybody asks that. And I think the formula is that you have to have really good interpersonal skills, and you have to believe in yourself. And you only learn to believe in yourself by doing it. As you can imagine, my daughter's CEO of YouTube. There is nobody for her to follow, right? There is no previous YouTube in the last century. I mean, she's forging a path by herself, and she's trying to make it work for as many people as possible. And so far, the way she's constructed it, it's very successful. It turns out that YouTube is the #1 most popular learning site in the world. And they've got more than 1 billion education hits per day. And now in this pandemic, it's gone up 30%, which is just huge. And in terms of watching movies or watching videos or whatever, the usage on YouTube is more than Netflix and Amazon Prime combined. So more people are watching, being entertained. And this was something that she conceptualized, she believed in. And just imagine the promise behind YouTube. The promise behind YouTube is that you, the consumer, can be trusted to put very entertaining videos up there yourself. You don't have to go through a major studio like Metro Goldwyn Mayer or Columbia or something. You can be an entertainer. Mm. And of course, look at what the world has done. The world has done amazing things with YouTube. Okay, there have been problems, but the problems have, for the most part, been solved, or they're in the process of constantly being solved. And that's thanks to algorithms, and thanks to YouTube hired 10,000 additional people just to help make sure that the content is okay.
Your classes were mainly about journalism, right?
It was about journalism, but journalism is about thinking.
So that's what I was coming to. How did that help people finding their passion? Could you share some stories?
So journalism, the story types that I was teaching, first news, then opinion, features, reviews, and sports. Those are the main journalism types. And then within reviews, I had columns and all different kinds of reviews, movie reviews, book reviews, product reviews. I even invented more reviews. They were doing app reviews and website reviews and, different kinds of food reviews or whatever. Let me tell you, I said to the kids, once they learned the styles, you get to pick what you're writing about. I don't care what you're writing about. You get to decide. You want to write an opinion piece? You don't like what's going on in the government? Get to do that. If you want to write about what your favorite app is, your favorite game, that's great. So, there was nothing except almost nothing, I should say, that was off limits for writing about. And kids got really excited about it because they could write about music and guitar and painting and whatever they might want to write about. The only thing, I taught them the principles of the press: no pornography, no inciting to riot, and very, very careful about libel. You never want to harm another person's reputation. And the only way that you can write something that's negative, your only support is truth. And if it isn't true and you don't have a lot of documentation and a lot of ways to show that's actually true, don't write it. And, that gives kids a lot of freedom. And then also I gave them the responsibility. I said, it's in your hands. I'm not going to micromanage you. And I'm not going to be the policeman in the classroom. And I'll tell you, just having that responsibility made a huge difference to them, because I said, you know, you could get me fired tomorrow. All you have to do is write something and publish it that's going to create a lot of problems. And then that's the end of the teacher. And so for 40 years, fortunately, I never had a problem. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Anyway, I thought after I retired, well, from the classroom, now I am teaching teachers. And I just did that in June. But school started again starting in the next couple of weeks. And so it turns out I'm still going to be involved, but I'm going to be doing it from home. And I'm working with teachers and students, and I'm pretty excited about it.
So could you share some of your student stories too, because you've had like 40 years is a long duration. So tell us about some of your students who have, you know.
Excuse me. My students have written some really important stories over the years. So one of the stories that was really had a dramatic impact was written in 1990s, and it was about teenage sexual behavior. And it was actually the beginning, or sometime in the middle of the AIDS epidemic, or the beginning of the AIDS epidemic. And they wanted to know, you know, what was their possibility of getting AIDS. So they did a survey of the entire student body at Palo Alto High School. At that point, there were 1,800 students. And to try to find out, like, what were their sexual behaviors and what were they putting themselves at risk. And it turned out, they did the survey twice because they couldn't believe the results. It turned out that a large percentage of kids that were having sex, which was about 40%, about 80% of that 40% were not using any protection. And that was a really impactful story. It impacted the whole community. And as a result of that story, it was all done by kids, by the way. These kids were between 15 and 18. The school district, the whole school district, implemented a course called Skills for Living. And they put in not only, you know, how to protect yourself health-wise, sexually, but other things that they thought were important for kids to know. And a lot of the curriculum for that course was suggested by students. So that's quite the exciting, that was a very impactful and exciting story. They've also written other stories. In 1996, they wrote a story about corruption in the school board of education, which resulted in many of the people in that administration resigning. Then in 2000s and going on, they wrote stories about products that they really liked, and ways of dressing that they really liked, and created fads of how people dressed and how other kids dressed. They've written some incredible stories that have impacted the community. And most recently, and actually today, they're writing stories about the pandemic and what should and shouldn't be done. So while the schools were out this spring, there was no classes except online. What I did together with some of the other teachers in the journalism program, we gave all the responsibility and trust to the kids to run the Zoom calls. They ran their own Zoom calls. And in the process, they decided, hey, why don't we see if we can publish the paper, the magazine from home? Let's see whether we can't collaborate. And they did it. It turns out they've succeeded in collaborating. The class had 60 kids in it, collaborating from home. My class published a newspaper on time. Other classes published magazines, again on time. And this was all done from home. And the creativity and being able to adapt your computer and the software to be able to work from home, it all came about because they were in charge. You know, if I would have been in charge, I was like, oh my God, I don't see how we can do it. They're smart, much smarter than I am about this. So that is just one outcome. And if you go online, you'll see, if you go to Palo Alto High School, and then under Palo Alto High School, they have journalism. All the publications are listed there, and you can see what they published. And this was published in May while they were all home. So that's just an example of kids and their creativity.
So that's the result. But talking about the lockdown, how do your virtual classrooms look like?
Well, the virtual classroom it was very different than virtual classrooms that other teachers have. You saw the kids in charge. There was a lot of opportunity for kids to socially interact. So they could talk to their friends. You know, if you go on the Zoom calls, they have these little rooms, you know, that you can go. So kids would go into little rooms and talk with each other and plan things. And then they would come back to the big room, and you would see the big group of kids together, and it was led by the leaders were kids. So that was very different than what you would see in a typical Zoom call. So now schools are starting next week. We'll see how that, you know, that plays out. I published a blog post on Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, which is an American publisher of textbooks and books for schools, in which I said the most important things that I said, the 7 most important things that teachers should do. And the number one thing that I said teachers should do coming into this new school year, number 1 was first take care of themselves, because teachers are so stressed. And if they're really stressed, it's hard to be a good teacher. And so that's why you want to give some responsibility to the kids. They can help you. You develop a community, and you're all working together. You have a common goal. And so, you know, I encourage people to find that. The other thing I did this summer, I started a company with my former students who they're actually in charge. I'm their advisor for the most part. And the company is called Tract, TRACT.app. And I encourage, right now you can sign up to be on the wait list to get to when it opens in the fall. You can get the material. And what they're doing is they designed learning paths designed by kids for kids. It's like, what do you want to learn about? What do you want to do? Hey, we have some ideas for you. And they're really revolutionary ideas, because teenagers, they automatically come up with these really wild ideas. I don't know any other group that is so creative. And so that's what they're doing in this track.app. So suggest that people might want to check that out and see what that's all about. And as I said, maybe there's a few people in the company that were not my former students or my present students, but we're also accepting people from all over the world, by the way, because we want this to be international for all kids. So we'd love to have people from the UK.
Oh, definitely. I'm going to put all of those links in the description so that people can have access to them. That's great. So the values that you told me about TRIC, right? The trust,
Yes,
respect, independence, collaboration, and
kindness.
they are very much appropriate in the current corporate world as well, right?
Oh, for sure. I'm doing, sorry, there's a bug right in front of me. I'm not trying to do it. It's just, if I was like, oh, this teacher is going crazy. No, but yes, it's very important in the corporate world. And now I'm doing TRIC for corporations. I have a whole new group of sort of seminars for corporate leaders, because in this world that we live in today, if you don't trust your employees at home, you cannot micromanage them. And if you don't trust them, you're not going to get people that are passionate and productive. You have to trust and respect their ideas. They might come up with dramatically fantastic ideas. So give them that opportunity. Yes. So important in
So
today's world.
how is the trick tailored for corporate? How is it different than the trick for kids?
It's very similar to Trick for Kids. It's it's trusting. You know, unfortunately, a lot of companies don't trust their employees, and you know that's why they have time clocks, and that's why there is actually chairs that you can buy that have built-in ways to figure out how much time the employee is sitting in the chair and working. It's a device you can attach to chairs. I mean, why would anyone want a device like that? Because you don't trust your employees. That's pretty bad. And so if you don't trust your employees, you don't respect their ideas. I mean, they're not going to produce for you. They're just going to give you what they think you want, right? Because they want to be employed. And you're not going to get any creativity out of them. They're not going to even try to collaborate if you're so busy telling them what to do all the time, dictating. And most employees, I'm sorry to say, in most schools as well, we did a survey. Oh yeah, that's another thing my students did, a survey on kindness. They asked their friends, like, how many of their teachers could be rated as kind? And most kids said 0. I think that was pretty bad myself.
Yeah.
But I would say in the world, the employment world, the corporate world, you would probably say the same thing, that you know they're not kind, you know. And I think if you want people to really be passionate and work well and be, you know, good employees, they have to see you as empathetic and compassionate. And a lot of the companies that I've worked with in Silicon Valley have Trick established as a model. And I would say that the number one company that I know about personally that that uses a Trick model in the corporate world is Google. And that's probably because, you know, I was there when Google was born. And so I saw how they developed and grew, and probably they took some ideas from me, but it's a company where the employees are really valued and where their ideas are welcomed and where there's a lot of compassion. And they've been a good model for a lot of other companies. And so now there are more companies that are doing that. And in the pandemic today, I mean, my God, we're all living with the unexpected. We need these companies to be more empathetic and more compassionate and more show kindness. Because how do you know, when somebody close to you gets the virus and can't function the way that they normally did, or whether your life is turned upside down? So the bad thing is that we still don't have a vaccine. Maybe we'll have a therapeutic soon, I hope. But also, I think, no, nevertheless, it looks like a lot of people have gotten the virus and then recovered, which is great. Maybe we'll get herd immunity at some time soon. I don't know. But I think this is a very unpredictable time. And so using Trick in corporations, it only works to the benefit of the corporation.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And to contrary, actually, most companies do have core values, somehow somewhat similar to these ones. Some have 3, some have 5, some have 6. But the question is that how many of those companies actually live those values? And that's open for debate.
That's right. Well, we hope that they will see the importance of doing that and then continue.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the most important thing.
definitely. Yeah, people should give more value to their values. We really need
Yes.
that.
Yes, for sure. I mean, it doesn't hurt them in any way.
Yeah.
I mean, try it. I like to suggest to anybody who's a corporation or works in a corporation, just try it and see how positive it can be. You'll be shocked.
Okay, great. Esther, I'm coming to my one common question that I ask most of my guests. You have already kind of answered it many times, I would say. But But the question is, what are the top 3 skills that you believe one needs in order to grow and be successful, but those skills are not taught in the schools?
Number one skills that kids need are the social emotional skills that come about when you work collaboratively with other people. Compassion, empathy, vision, willingness to make a mistake. And it's all embodied in the trick philosophy. But it's so important for people to have social emotional skills because we can all hire a genius of some kind. There's a lot of kids around that, have a lot of today's world, a lot of perfect scores, but can they work effectively with other people? That is really important. And so that's the number one thing that I think we need to have. And also, if kids, they didn't have the training that they should have had to start at the beginning, it's never too late to start now, to believe in yourself and take care of yourself.
So true, so true. So Esther, you have literally transformed the way we see education. And what's your future goal now? What next for you?
Well, so I'm trying to do this more broadly through the whole world, which is why I worked with these students in this company, track.app. We're hoping it will be able to impact kids everywhere. And then also I'm working with a new company, with a new school. It's a Chinese American school. It's actually an American school with a lot of Chinese students from the United States. It actually has a variety of students, I should say. It's kind of like a multicolored group of people, everybody from all over. But it started by some Chinese entrepreneurs. And I'm trying to help them also be more proactive and be able to give kids more of these social emotional skills that I just talked about. It's great to get 100% on a test, but can you use that in a way that makes a difference in the world? Or are you just like a living computer, which is useless unless you can actually share?
Thank you. That's, all the best for your future endeavors, and I'm sure that it's going to be adding a lot of value to the world we live in. I actually had wanted to ask many questions, but in the interest of time, we'll have to finish here. Finally, could you tell our viewers how can people reach you?
So if they want to reach me, the best way is probably on LinkedIn, or if not LinkedIn, Twitter. Twitter is Esther Wojcicki at Twitter. It's the little @ in Twitter. And I think that those are probably the best ways. And then also on Facebook, I'm also Esther Wojcicki at Facebook. And I can't take any more friends. I'm maxed out, but they have a lot of public followers. So I still get all those messages. And I think that would probably be the most effective way. So thank you so much. I mean, I'm honored, and I think you're doing great things for kids everywhere. So appreciate being able to give this talk.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, Esther. Really highly appreciate this. Thanks a lot. I learned a lot.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And guys, if you're looking to learn more about Trick, the book is going to come in the UK, but it's already there in the US. But there is a lot of material available on internet. So browse through, just search by her name and you'll find a lot of information, plenty of videos to learn from. And if you have not yet done so, then this is the time to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you get notification to all my future videos. I will see you again next week. Till then, goodbye.